Hello, and welcome to our presentation describing our project to trace 17th century travel routes across the Pontic steppe. Our presentation starts with a description of the goal of this project, followed by a review of the primary sources that we have used to execute the project. We then provide an overview of the geographic region that our work focuses on, with some comments on why this region is of interest to us. We then describe what a schlock is and why it is of importance to our work. Next, we show how we went about tracing schlock routes. We conclude by telling you how you can access our results. This project includes both schlock routes and minor trail routes, but the primary project focus is on schlock routes. In the early modern period, there were no regular roads across the Pontic steppe. Travel was conducted along general paths known as szlak in Polish. The goal of this project is to trace the routes of three such trails: the Czarny Szlak, the Kuczmański Szlak, and the Morawski Szlak. As mentioned, this project also traces minor trails through portions of this region. We start by focusing on the three well-known schlock routes through the Pontic steppe. Here we see some likely origins of the names of the three trails that we have traced. Our primary source for tracing schlock routes is the work of Beauplan. In 1630, Beauplan traveled to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to begin a 17-year military career in the Crown Army. His account of this period was published in 1660. In addition to providing a coherent tableau of 17th century Ukrainian landscape, peoples, flora, and climate, Beauplan's work provides a major cartographic description of this region. Beauplan's maps are great sources of several types of historical information for this region. Beauplan's maps identify a variety of types of places, as well as identifying who controlled the places. The map even shows popular clothing styles of the time. Note that, as with many Beauplan maps, this map has north at the bottom. Here is an example of one of Beauplan's maps, with 4 modern cities shown for reference. This map is typical of the types of maps that we used to trace the schlock routes. So, why is the region covered by Beauplan's works of interest to us? During the 16th and 17th centuries, the frontier between Polish-Lithuanian lands and the Ottoman Empire stretched for over 1,000 kilometers through the Pontic steppe. This geographic region consisted of several types of coinciding and overlapping frontiers. Of particular interest to us is the area of the Pontic steppe that we will be referring to in this presentation as the wild fields. In the 1500s, the wild fields region was claimed by both Poland-Lithuania and the Ottoman Empire. The historical Polish-Lithuanian border claim is shown here in red, and the Ottoman border claim is shown in blue, with the wild fields forming the heart of the disputed territory. Describing and understanding the causes and outcomes of this border dispute constitutes a primary field of study for the team executing this project. The remoteness and inaccessibility of the wild fields posed problems for both the Polish king and Ottoman sultan in projecting their power into this region. As a result, regional and subordinate rulers, local elites, merchants, and independent violent actors became important elements in the projection of power into the spaces in between these polities. We will meet one of these violent actors shortly. This projection of power was heavily reliant on access to and means of movement through this region, hence the importance of the schlock routes. Schlock routes were also an important element in the Black Sea slave trade. In the 16th and 17th centuries, over 2 million Pontic steppe dwellers were sold on Ottoman slave markets. One effect of this was a lack of a settled population in the region, which, in addition to the remoteness and inaccessibility of the region, further reduced the king and sultan's ability to claim authority over the space, thereby exacerbating the border dispute issue. The sultan in particular had a monetary incentive to tax pastoralists and the slave trade, which also strengthened his jurisdiction over the region. Thus, while slavery formed an important element of the economy of the time in this region, its impact on the population of this region had significant geopolitical ramifications for both Poland, Lithuania, and the Ottoman Empire. Small and medium-sized slave raids occurred year-round, with large raids, invasions, and war sending tens of thousands of slaves to Black Sea slave markets. Schlock trails provided routes for moving the slaves to the slave markets. The Schlock routes across the Pontic steppe figured heavily in development of new defensive strategies to counter slave raids from the south through the wild fields into Poland and Lithuania. In addition to the establishment of a salaried standing cavalry, border defenses were often bolstered by privately owned frontier fortresses located along Schlock routes. We see here a report from a violent actor, Bernard Pretvich, one of the Polish-Lithuanian border patrollers, that emphasizes the military importance of trails through this region. Beauplan's description of Ukraine provides us with detailed descriptions of how these slave raids were conducted. Information such as this was very useful in our efforts to trace Schlock routes. To learn more about Polish-Lithuanian border disputes with the Ottoman Empire, the Black Sea slave trade, and the importance of Schlock routes across the Pontic steppe, see these references. Let us now turn to the process that we use to trace the Schlock routes. Here are the 15 Beauplan maps that we use to trace the routes. In addition to showing paths for the 3 trails traced in this project, these maps show populated places, rivers, river crossings, river rapids, islands, fords, forests, mountains, and valleys, all of which serve as landmarks for tracing the routes. In order to trace the routes, landmarks on Beauplan's maps were associated with equivalent modern-day landmarks. 4 sources were used to make these associations. Our base maps of Ukraine project provided rivers, terrain elevation, and terrain ruggedness information. Our gazetteer of Beauplan's Ukraine project associates modern places with places shown on Beauplan's maps. A Google physical map and a Bing aerial map provided additional landmarks. See the links below for more information on these and related sources used for this project. Base maps of elevation and rivers are extremely important in tracing Schlock routes. Here you see rivers and elevation base maps for a portion of the region covered by Beauplan's maps. Here is a close-up of the terrain ruggedness map from our base maps of Ukraine project. We use this map to make final detailed adjustments to paths to avoid rugged terrain. Here we see locations of populated places shown on Beauplan's maps as provided by our gazetteer Beauplan's Ukraine project. This map shows fords, islands, rapids, and rivers from our gazetteer Beauplan's Ukraine project. These features can provide additional landmarks for tracing Schlock routes. This is a map of forests, mountains, and valleys from our gazetteer of Beauplan's Ukraine project. These features can also provide landmarks for tracing Schlock routes. Using these sources, we can now describe the process that we used to trace the Schlock routes. For the example that we are following here, we will be tracing the intersection of two segments of the Charney Schlock. We start by identifying landmarks on boat plan maps that straddle a schlock path. Here the populated places named Chav and Ellens provide examples of useful landmarks. Note that this map has north at the bottom. The next step is to prepare a QGIS project where we will trace the schlock routes. Here we see a populated places layer from our Gazetteer Boat Plans Ukraine project superimposed on rivers and elevation-based maps with our two example landmarks highlighted. Next, we use landmarks from boat plans maps and modern sources to find boundaries within which a route should run. Here, we see that the section of the Charney Schlock that we are tracing should lie within the green boundary lines we've drawn on the map. This map with red line boundaries superimposed on terrain elevation shows how the initial green line boundaries can be refined to avoid crossing valleys and ridges. Here we see the refined route boundaries superimposed on a Bing aerial map. Notice the rail line running down the middle of the bounded region. We now draw the route following modern rail lines and roads wherever possible. As a final step, we use terrain ruggedness to make fine adjustments to the path. Here we see the final route for our section of the Charney Schlock compared to the equivalent region of a boat plan map, which has been inverted to show north at top. Here then are our final schlock and minor trail routes as traced by this project. In conclusion, please note that while the primary beneficiaries of this work are anticipated to be scholars, researchers, and historians, the resources being made available support preservation of and exposure to the history and culture of the region that can also provide the general public with a human dimension to places that may be known only for their current focus as a center of geopolitical conflict. To this end, all materials are in the public domain and are being made available online through a Harvard Dataverse repository under a public domain Creative Commons Universal Deed license. All materials used for this project can be accessed through the Boat Plans Travel Routes section of our Boat Plans Places in Ukraine Harvard Dataverse repository. See the links below for tutorials on how to use the various elements of this Dataverse. Thank you for your attention. We hope that our work can be of assistance to you. And finally, don't forget to check out the links below for related videos.